go will gin and show all Gael talk to your Connell or Connell Gallagher. I was killed with a false road with now clean you. Donald Donnelly's my name from Meadowbrook. And I would like to say the comments that have already been made are so absolutely spot on that it's very difficult to find something new to say, except I would like to support one or two points that were made and maybe add another. In 1968 and 69, our Residents Association in Meadowbrook and Dundrum in Dublin was part of the great ACRA campaign against ground rents, which had a massive success, and there was a lesson from that. I was also involved in the water charges. We also involved in the ACRA rates campaign as a foot soldier, and that also had a massive successful result. We were involved with the water charges, which we refused to pay, and that was successful. So I just want to say that there's a thread here that is should give us confidence. However, it's important to say that those in the government and the establishment have learned how to deal with people like us. And of course, we didn't succeed as well with the bin charges campaign. In fact, in my case, when Leary got down because I had got the bin men on our side, they actually confiscated my bins one particular day, which just shows you the kind of low steps they take. I just would like to say that one gentleman there from the north who mentioned the rent and rate strikes after the internment, and he said something I think should resonate with us all, and that is, let's have a strategy. I know it's early days, but we must distinguish between tactics and strategy. And strategy is vitally important. And one of the strategies, whenever Joe Higgins went to court, a lot of us were there, including myself, when we were then he was jailed, and we had a big march up outside Mountjoy jail, and the president of SITU spoke, and there was a huge crowd of us there that day. But the lesson out of that, and the point that I would like to make, which kind of is built on many of the points that have been made by which will involve people like myself, and that is that we need to make this a broad front. We need to get the independent TVs, we need to get the smaller parties, we need to put pressure, as has already been said by, I think, Paul Murphy, about pressurising union leaders. We need to make this a broad front, so the strategy needs to be there, because I think that the objective situation is right. People who are far miles away from what perhaps the Joe Higgins' political policy would be shouting, "Good man Joe," when he does this, because I can tell you that we're lucky to have the likes of Joe. If it's not an ironic thing to say, thank God for Joe Higgins and Monica Steeves. Thank you very much.
I'm from Limerick. I'm with the Socialist Party and the United Left Alliance. The British Army has a phrase, a slogan, the 7 Ps, they say. It's proper planning and preparation prevents piss-poor performance. And I think that's something that we need to make certain that we get right. We have now 4 months until the bill comes in at the start of January. I say 3 months because a chunk of that will obviously be Christmas. And then the government is saying that after it's introduced from January, about 3 or so months that people have to pay it. So essentially it's a game of 2 halves that we have here. And I think we need to be using that time as best we can. I think essentially it is like preparing for war. We have 3 months now to get our plan in order, get our house in order, to get the campaign properly set up and on a strong basis, and then 3 months after Christmas, once the bills land, of an all-out battle. I think in any war you have 3 things you have to do. In particular, you have to you get your propaganda, get people on side. You get your soldiers, and then you get your armaments. If you're preparing for any war, you need your propaganda, you need your soldiers, you need your weapons. I think immediately what we have to be doing is a propaganda war. We have to be winning the case on this, and I think one of the key things, I just want to add in one extra point on some of those points. I think a lot of that has been made. But the point that once they get this bill in, it'll rise and rise. And the linking it to austerity and all that, just some figures to put that on. As it stands, they're saying 1.6 million people, 1.6 million households, €100 each. That's 160 million euro they're talking about. Earlier this year, the government cut PRSI, cut employers' PRSI, cut tax on employers. essentially, at a cost of about 480 million over 3 years. That's 160 million every single year. So this one tax that they're doing just makes up for the tax cut for big business. In August, the government in bonds paid an estimated 450 million euro in repaying bonds just in August. And the other third example of what 160 million euro is escaping me. Oh yeah, the cost of putting in the meters for water charges is estimated at 500 million. So in the scheme of things, they're not risking their political credibility for 160 million. It's quite clear they want to get billions and billions out of this. And we need to prepare that propaganda battle. In terms of who are our soldiers, who are the soldiers to fight this, I don't think it's the case. It isn't Jack O'Connor, it isn't David Bay, it isn't motions at union conferences. Definitely we should put those down, use those, but the real soldiers in this has to be ordinary working class activists in the communities, a community-based campaign. If we organise in the communities those people, then go into their unions, put down motions, definitely. But the battle will be fought, the foot soldiers of this will be working class people in the communities. And I think our key weapon, what is our strongest weapon? And again, I don't think it's motions. I think our strongest weapon is non-payment. If you can make the charge uncollectible, if you can make it so it's costing them more to try to collect it than the charge will bring in. If we can make it so that it's an impossibility to bring in this charge, that's how we can defeat it. That is the bedrock on which all other tactics, I think, can be built.
Thanks.
Ruth Coppinger, Councillor of the Socialist Party in the United Left Alliance. I just wanted to come in on the key arguments of the campaign, because I think obviously we all need to be crystal clear on those. I agree with an awful lot of what's been said. I think the first argument we have to make is about the likelihood that this will escalate, because the government are trying to say €2 a week, sure that's nothing, you know, and I think we have to immediately address that this is step one. It's a forerunner for a property tax on every home and a water charge on every home, and we have to immediately link this interim charge with those other two. The ESRI figure has already been spoken about, and I think that's crucial. I do think that there will be some people say, well, maybe I should pay it, it's 100, and you know, we got to get some steel into people on that. I think the second argument, as has been alluded to by many, is that this is linked with what's going on in society. You know, this is not just about €100 a week. This is about an attack on ordinary people, a transfer of wealth beyond belief, never attempted in the history of this country. And it's time to take a stand on this one. You know, this is one that we can fight because it's a discretionary payment. You know, people can choose to withhold it. The universal social charge, all the other things were taken out of our wages. The union leaders sat by. Householders have a chance and have power over this one, and I think we should argue that. I think the third argument obviously should be about the unjust nature of the tax. I think it is a flat rate tax at the moment, and it's very obviously unjust to a pensioner and a millionaire paying the same amount. It won't be forever though, so I don't think we should just focus on that. But this is an attempt to change the whole tax base in this country. You know, it's a regressive form of taxation, and I think Keane outlined, you know, we have to be pointing to where the wealth is in society, because there is a belief out there that there is no wealth, you know, that the country's bankrupt, and we have to point a way forward for people. I think the whole issue of non-payment is crucial here today, because I think that man was right. We have a Labour councillor in my own ward who says I'm against the tax, but he's not willing to advocate non-payment, and neither are Sinn Féin. And I think what we have to say at meetings, if those people do come along, is that non-payment is a cornerstone of this campaign. Now, if people don't agree with that, this isn't the campaign for them. You know, they can go and they can have their own campaign. I wouldn't advocate a vote on that at a meeting, because this campaign, we're putting it up to people and we're trying to give them confidence not to pay it. You wouldn't like to have a vote at a meeting at a very early stage when people haven't got that confidence. You know, this is what our campaign is about. We try to win people to it. If people don't agree with non-payment, well then, you know, there's a lobbying campaign that they can do. I want to stress about non-payment. We have a big issue in our area of management fees, and very long story short, the only time that the management companies take note is when people don't pay the management fees. You know, so the idea that you can pay tax under duress and that they, you know, it's not going to be effective. We have to argue that this campaign is about achieving, giving people confidence for mass non-payment of this tax to make it uncollectible. And that's the cornerstone of the campaign. That has to be patiently done, built for and worked for. And while I totally agree, I'm sure everyone in this room would love to see mass mobilisation on the streets of Ireland. But I think, Rod, I think we have to build a campaign first before we would call, for a mobilisation. I think we have to actually create that, and I don't think there is a substitute for the door-to-door, the membership work, the building on the ground. It isn't a case of one versus the other, but I argue that non-payment is the most important thing to build, and a real campaign in every community.
My name is Tom Hindy. I'm a member of the Socialist Party from Wexford, and I travelled up here this morning specifically to support the campaign. There's been a lot of good things said here, and I think we should embrace certainly some of the things. The passion that you hear is fantastic, and everybody rallies, everybody jumps up, and everybody expresses, yes, we should do this. But if we're talking about working class people, we should remember a few things. The unemployed at the moment is touching 500,000. It's going to get bigger, we know that. And we know a lot of people are going to be unemployed in the next 12 months, 2 years. We should be embracing these people. We also should dispel, one of our brothers here said something about dispelling the banners, of who we represent. The left, the movement, there is massive, massive power in the movement of people. We only have to turn on the TV and the radio any day and see exactly what's being succeeded. Right across Europe. The word revolution hasn't been used here today. But let's not kid ourselves. This is really what we're talking about. There is a revolution sweeping right across the world that is coming here. Now we're here today to talk about the water, and that's great, because, it's one of the reasons I'm here this morning. But I'm here for more than that. I want everybody that's here to take the message back to their town, their village, unite with their left group, no matter who they are. And we should start embracing the people that have become unemployed. This is another addition to the already growing left movement in this country. And I think, we see this situation of water recently. And these are people, we heard them crying on television, mortgages, everything like. This is how the left works. When the pain hurts, when it hurts enough, we scream. There's no point in this elitist attitude or intellectualise how we do something. We don't have to do that. We don't have to. There's a lot of talk here today about how we might do this or how we might do that, or why we can't do something. I say we can do damn well what we like if we stick together and get out and make it happen. Now I would ask everybody that's here today who's passionate about what they're here for, to take it back to their own communities, develop an understanding with the network. There should be a stronger link, first of all, with the left and every network around every village and town in the country. If we do that, we can beat this, we can beat anything. And let's join our brothers and sisters right across the world, and let's defeat not just this government, but capitalism in its rotten core. Let's beat it now. Thank you very much.
I just want to say that when Joe was outlining his introduction there, talking about the campaign in Dublin from 94 to 97, in Waterford and in other counties in the water rates campaign, water rates were actually introduced in 1983 in Waterford, and the things that he outlined there in terms of court appearances, disconnections and all that, we went through that throughout the 90s, and a lot of it, most of the talk that people said that used to come up with, we're on our own. It's happening in Limerick, it's happening in Cork, but it's not happening in Dublin. And it wasn't until 94, of course, until the habitation of people, of ordinary people. If it ends up with left groups running this, I don't think it'll go anywhere. But certainly, we are the people that have to ignite it and to get it off the ground. And in Waterford, we hope to do that in the next number of weeks. But I think in going to communities and different states and what have you, where we hold meetings, I think we need to be on top of our game in terms of, people ask questions about who's going to be affected. I'm living in a corporation house, I'm paying rent, have I to pay it? I'm living in social housing, have I to pay it? I'm unemployed. All those questions, I think we need to be on top of that. We need to have that type of information to give to people. The campaign by its nature is passive. whether we like it or not. People are holding on to their money, they're not going to pay. And what do you do tomorrow? You just keep your money in your pocket. But it isn't a campaign like a strike or something that is ongoing and people are meeting together and what have you. So I think that the benchmark has to be really looking back at the water rates campaign, the things that happened there. And we came off, the man reminded me there, we came off a ground race campaign in one of the bigger estates in Waterford, and there was some degree of organisation that came into the initial water race campaign. And in addition to that, we did have the Workers' Party councillors in the local corporation that were voting against the introduction of charges and the people outside, and it was mass mobilisation. And I feel we said if we can repeat that, and by the tactics that we employed in those days, when we went around door to door to people, spoke to them, got collections for set up a defence fund, etc., all the stuff that's ever been outlined, I don't think we can go too far on, because the anger is out there. Waterford is crippled. There's more people unemployed down there now than are working. They just haven't got money to pay, and I'm sure that's replicated around the country.
Thanks, Chairman, Cummins and friends. Just about the €2 per week and the argument set by Hogan. Now, most people live in estates of a couple of hundred houses, or maybe a small village out the country, a couple of hundred houses between the houses around it, and they take their village. Now, this, even if this was kept to €100 a week, 20,000 is to be taken out of that village or estate in 1 year, 40,000 in 2 years. If this goes up to €1,000, you're going to be taking 200,000 out of an estate of 200 people. And there are very little services being provided at the moment. There's no grass being cut, water, things like that, because the council workers are being laid off. But think of what we'd say if this was 1,000 and 200,000 was being taken out of your estate of 200 houses, what that could do for that estate. It's alright to talk about €2 a week. That's what we're talking about. In bigger estates, like for instance in Dublin Valley Farmers or Crumlin or Gemna or Ongar or River Valley, where there's 1,000 houses, you'd be talking about, with €1,000 charge, €1 million being taken out of the pockets of people in those estates to be handed over to the bankers, not to be used for local services, to be handed over to repay the debts of these fraudsters, the bankers, and speculators who are robbing us blind. Now, it's likely that they will put the rate support grant in December, and that the council will come out and say that we haven't got money. We will have to put these services on. Less than €2 a week is paid. You will be letting you'll be responsible for letting workers go. You'll be responsible for cuts and services and so on. They may take this down, and we've got to respond to it. Of importance will be the role of the SIPTU and the impact workers. It will be the impact workers who will be sending out these bills. It will be the SIPTU workers who will be involved in any actions going to be taken against workers later on, water charge and so on. So we have to actually make sure that these unions are on side, and the ranks in particular of impact have to be approached and tackled and won over. Thank you.